Most people think they want peace. They work 9-to-5 jobs in nosy cities, dreaming of a cabin in the woods. They think silence is a gift, but they don't understand the anatomy of isolation. When you are truly alone, the silence doesn't just sit there. It eats at you. It magnifies the sound of your own heartbeat until it sounds like a drum in an empty cathedral. My name is Mark. I moved to rural Ohio to escape the noise of my past. I'm a freelance coder, a night owl by choice. My house was a minimalist's dream, a one-story ranch with floor-to-ceiling glass walls. I wanted to feel connected to nature. I didn't realize that in the dark, nature doesn't just let you watch, it watches back. It was October 12th. The rain wasn't just falling, it was an assault. The sky was a bruised purple, and the wind was howling through the oaks like a wounded animal. I was sitting at my desk, the only light coming from my dual monitors. I remember the smell of my coffee stale, cold, and the way the humidity made the air feel like a damp cloth over my face. I stopped typing. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. You know, that instinct, the one buried deep in our DNA from when we were cavemen? It told me that the rhythm of the rain had changed. There was a dead spot in the sound. Something was standing between the clouds and my window. I refused to look. I kept my eyes glued to the code, line for 150 to line for 153, but my monitor is a glossy Dell. It's basically a black mirror. Suddenly, the power grid groaned, the lights flickered once, twice, and then blackout. The silence that followed was so heavy it made my ears ring, and there, in the reflection of my dead screen, I saw the silhouette. It was positioned directly behind my left shoulder, separated only by a quarter-inch of tempered glass. It was impossibly thin, like a shadow that had been stretched on a rack. Its head was tilted, not a normal tilt, but a sickening, bone-snapping 90-degree angle that rested its ear on its own shoulder. I felt a cold sweat break out across my spine. I didn't move for 3 minutes. I could hear my own shallow breathing, and then I heard another breath. It was faint, but it was there. A wet, whistling sound coming from the other side of the glass. He was breathing on the pane. I could see the condensation forming a ghostly white circle in the reflection. I grabbed my tactical flashlight, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I spun around and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, hitting the glass. Nothing, just the black woods and the rain. But as I stepped closer, my heart nearly stopped. There, on the outside of the glass, was a smudge of gray slime, and at the bottom of the window, 2 barefoot prints, 6 toes on each foot. Long, needle-thin marks in the mud that looked like they had been made by claws, not toes. I backed away into the kitchen, my heels clicking on the hardwood. I grabbed a chef's knife, the cold steel feeling useless against whatever was out there. That's when the tapping started. Tap, 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 slow, rhythmic, like a teacher waiting for a student to answer. I ran to the front door, looking through the peephole. He was standing on my porch. The moonlight caught his face, and I wish I had never looked. He was wearing a tuxedo that looked like it had been buried in a grave for 50 years. It was caked in dried mud and ... something else, yellowish stains. His face, it was a nightmare of geometry, no-nosed, just 2 weeping, vertical slits. His eyes were huge, bulging white spheres with no pupils, staring directly into the peephole as if he could see my fear. And the smile, it wasn't a smile. Someone had taken a blade and carved his face open from ear to ear, then used rusted wire to stitch the corners back. It was a permanent, agonizing mask of joy. Then he began to dance. He moved like a marionette with cut strings, his knees bent backwards. His arms flailed in a slow, hypnotic waltz. With every movement, I heard the sound of dry wood snapping crack, pop. It was his joints. He was breaking his own body to entertain me. He circled the porch, his long, gray tongue occasionally darting out to lick the wood of my door. "Mark," he rasped, "why do you look at the door when your bedroom is so much more inviting?" A jolt of pure electricity ran through me. My bedroom. I had left the window cracked open earlier at evening to let in the fresh air. I sprinted down the hallway, the knife held out in front of me. I burst into my room, and the first thing I felt was the wind. The floor-to-ceiling window hadn't just been open. It had been shattered from the inside out. There were shards of glass on the lawn, but none on my carpet. That meant whatever was in here had already left, or so I thought. I looked at my bed. The covers were pulled back. In the center of my pillow was a single, fresh, pulsating human tooth. It was still bloody at the root. And then I heard a sound from the basement. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of something heavy being dragged up the stairs. I didn't wait to see what was coming out of that basement. I dived through the broken bedroom window, ignoring the glass that sliced into my palms. I ran into the forest, my bare feet hitting thorns and sharp rocks. I didn't stop until I reached the oldest oak tree on the property. I climbed until my lungs burned. From my perch, I looked back at the house. Every light was now on, and in every single window, the kitchen, the living room, the guest room, there was a smiling man. There were 7 of them now. They were all facing my tree, their white eyes glowing in the dark. They began to dance in unison, a synchronized waltz of death. And then the front door opened, a figure walked out. It was me. It was wearing my flannel shirt, my jeans. It even had my glasses. But as it looked up at the tree, it opened its mouth, and it kept opening until its jaw rested on its chest. It waved at me with a hand that had 12 fingers. The police found me the next morning, catatonic in that tree. They found my house empty. No smiling men, no intruder. But on the ceiling of my bedroom, written in a mixture of black mud and my own blood, were the words, "Your skin fits perfectly, Mark. See you next October." I live in a city now. I don't look at windows anymore. I keep my curtains bolted shut. But last night I heard it, a slow, rhythmic tap on my 40th floor window. And when I looked at my phone screen, I saw a reflection. A tall, pale man standing right behind me, holding a pair of rusted wire cutters. Sleep tight, and remember, if you hear a waltz in the wind, don't look out the window. Subscribe if you want to survive the night.